You know you've got an appointment coming up in the next few weeks. What are the first things you think of? For people with fibromyalgia, we often go to a doctor's office dreading talking about our fibro. And then there's things like fibro fog, pain, and you're stressed about going to the doctor. So, of course, what's that do? It brings on more of it. The one thing I do want to tell you is that talking to your doctor is not about finding the perfect word. What it's about is being honest, if not blunt. So, here are a few steps that I recommend when it comes to dealing with a doctor, especially a new doctor. The first thing is preparation. You don't want to have to do it, but it really will make the doctor's visit go better most of the time. One of the first things you do is decide what the appointment is for. I don't mean all your symptoms because frankly, we could go on for weeks about all our different symptoms. Go in with 2 or 3 symptoms that you want to discuss, but prioritize them in the degree of severity so that if you do not get past the first one, it's still the most important one that you deal with. It's like with me, it's generally about pain because that's my biggest symptom. Do I have others? Oh, God, yes. But pain is my number one. By identifying this, it will enable you to be more straightforward and more focused. Decide what you hope will happen, whether it may be a new test, a new medication, changing the dosage of your current medications. It could be a referral to physiotherapy, help you move better, maybe some advice or a follow up. All of these things are important, but you can't do them all in one single visit, especially not in the UK. UK gives you 10-minute appointments. You ain't going to get much done in that if you don't plan ahead, especially if you have to plan around your own symptoms. What are some of the hardest symptoms you find to explain to your doctor? The second step would be don't rely on your memory. Yeah, you may remember it, but if you're dealing with a case of fibro fog, the chances of you forgetting stuff is going to be quite high. It's just the nature of the illness, and you've got to work around it. And this is where my downloadable is something that I've come up with to try and help. Basically, what you do is you write stuff down. You write down your changes, you write down medications. So when you go in there, you've already got a list. If you're going to a new doctor, especially if it's a different practice, what I used to do is take a backpack and I just put all my drugs in it because they would always ask, "What are you on?" Back then, I was on like 25 different meds a day, some of them multiple times a day, and that didn't count supplements. So trying to remember everything you're on is virtually impossible, even without fibrofog. Add in fibrofog? Yeah, good luck. It don't work. So by taking the time over the course of the week or so prior to get prepared can make it a little less stressful for you. And it means you don't end up forgetting something that's obvious, which was extremely important, but you just did not have the headspace to keep it in front of your mind. Maybe you keep a list on your computer of treatments tried, of treatments that failed, of treatments that you've reacted negatively to, because there are going to be a lot of trial and error when it comes to dealing with your fibro. God knows I have tried, seems like everything under the sun. Some doesn't work. Others I've actually had an allergic reaction to. So you don't want to forget those details. Just bear in mind these notes are not to prove you're ill. They are to remind you of things. So you want to keep them brief. Another thing you might want to think about is what has changed since your last appointment. Maybe your pain has gotten worse, sleep has gotten worse, or maybe it's gotten better. what you've tried, what has helped and not helped. It doesn't have to be all negative. Some of it can be positive because that gives them a better knowledge of what direction to go. You could talk about some of the side effects of what you're on, and they decide if that is the right prescription for you. Explain when new symptoms happen, how often they happen, and how severe they get. Let's say you deal with lightheadedness and it has gotten worse, the point where it's so severe, every single time you stand up, you have to grab a hold of something. You're worried you're going to faint. One thing to bear in mind, not every symptom you start experiencing is going to be related to your fibromyalgia. There are a lot of comorbidities that come along with fibromyalgia, and you can easily develop something that goes along with it. Things like arthritis, hot and cold flashes could be because of the fibro. You may be going into menopause. They could be related to your medications, not your fibro. In fact, most symptoms that you deal with when it comes to fibro are present in quite a few other illnesses. Another very important factor that you need to make sure you express to your doctor, especially when you're talking about your symptoms, you've got to explain how it affects your functionality. Things like pain, dizziness, falls, the inability to stand for very long, it affects almost everything in your daily life, whether it be showers, cooking, cleaning, all of this stuff. And if you don't explain how your symptoms affect your function, then it's just a list of symptoms that they really have no understanding of how bad it gets. You can say, oh my God, it's so bad. But that doesn't actually tell them exactly how bad it is. You have to be willing to express the functionality of what your fibro does to you. It's like, say, you used to be able to cook standing, do a full meal, that wouldn't be any big deal. Now, to be able to even cook a very simple meal, you have to sit, and it takes you generally several hours to be able to get enough energy back to be able to even go and clean up the kitchen. You can also explain about how your symptoms are affecting your ability to walk, because that is a very big one. I know my walking is not extremely limited distance wise, and how quickly it gets to the point where I'm about ready to collapse because the pain gets bad. Yet I still do my best to do as much walking as possible. But the doctors don't truly understand that, especially if they see you walking in. They don't understand how different days can really make it so your walking is non-existent, or how much you're holding on to things to be able to maintain balance. One thing you really do need to keep in mind when you're talking with your doctor, do not keep your best days as a reference. I'm not saying over exaggerate. What I'm saying is discuss how your typical day is, and then do not be afraid to bring up the bad days. I do want you to understand that there is a difference between over exaggeration and accurately explaining what the cost of your symptoms actually are. After explaining the issue that you're having, state exactly what you were hoping for in this appointment. Say you're hoping that you can talk to them about changing your medication, whether it be increasing it, decreasing it, or something is not working. In fact, on my downloadable, I've actually got a space where you can write down exactly what you're hoping to achieve in that appointment so you don't forget. You can often assume that you will remember, but with fibrofog, never assume anything. Sometimes it may be discussing different treatment options. You're thinking about going to a chiropractor and get advice from the doctor. Maybe you wanted to talk about some information you had found, and your doctor may or may not have heard of it. Maybe bring in a copy of the research. Don't expect them to read it right there, but be willing to give it to them so they could read it on their own time if they want. A difficult appointment can be detrimental to your trust in a doctor. We often experience the gaslighting and we dismissive doctors. It's one of those things where to hear it's all in your head, the next thing you want to do is throw something at the doctor. We don't, but we really wish we could. It's one of the reasons why we're so cynical about going to see the doctor in the first place. It's because of how often our symptoms and our illness is dismissed. You feel like you're beating your head against a cinder block wall, and yet we can't stop because this is what we live with. But when you think about it, it's not just dismissal or gaslighting. Is part of the problem is limited time. Part of it is limited capacity on our part due to symptoms. Sometimes it's about missing information and communication skills on both sides. Maybe there is stuff that doctor is pointing out to you that you don't understand. You feel like it's dismissing what you're trying to talk about. It's like the statement, well, you just need exercise. We think of that as just automatic dismissal, which generally it is. But at the same time, it does have its element of truth. I won't lie, since I've started going back to the gym in a disabled friendly way, I have noticed a difference. I still have my flares. I still have weakness, but the flares are less and the symptoms are also reduced. So there is an element of truth to it, much as we really do not like the thought of doing exercise, which I fully understand. I didn't like it either. I still don't. If anything, as long as it makes me feel a bit better, I'm willing to tough it out. Does it hurt during the sessions? God, yes. But short-term pain for longer term, less pain? Yeah, I'm willing to do it. What you can also do is ask genuine questions, such as the doctor says, you just need more exercise, you just need to lose weight. You can say, okay, why do you think that? They may just give you a stock answer, but it's about trying to make the doctor realize that we are trying to work with them. We are trying to understand why they think in a certain way. You never know when it may actually give you some food for thought. Another thing you may also think is, what other illnesses do you consider when you're thinking about my symptoms? That right there will give you a point to do some more research. If they're discussing the pain in your joints, the first thing they almost always think about is arthritis or osteoarthritis. You can do some research into that. You can also mention, this is severely affecting my function. What are some other things I can do besides what you've already told me to try and improve my functionality? This gets them out of the stock answers, and it can get them thinking about the situation in a different way. You never know when it may be something you haven't considered. What you can do is ask if you can get the doctor's notes, and it can help you build all documentation that you keep at home. Have you ever remembered something important, but only after you've left the doctor's office? Before you leave, make sure that you both on the same page about what has been decided, what has been agreed to, because you won't always agree. And what would be the plan for your next appointment? Consider if there's any new tests that they want to order, what new treatments they're thinking of. Ask, how long do you think it'll be before you start see the effects of the treatment? Because most medications you try do not have an effect immediately. It takes time for them to build in your system. That's why they always want you to give it at least a few weeks before you say it's not working. Maybe you ask if any of your symptoms require going to see a different doctor, such as the rheumatologist, pain management, physical therapy. All of these things might possibly be referrals to try and get your symptoms under control. As you leave the doctor's office, stop by the desk to see about arranging the next appointment or talk about dealing with arranging for referrals. Some of them you may have to wait for them to call you to make arrangements. Be proactive. If you don't hear from them in a short period of time, go ahead and start calling them because you can easily get lost. They try not to, but you and I both know that it often happens. So being proactive is the best way to handle medical issues. It, again, comes back to self-advocacy. The whole thing is about you, and you are the only one that can really fix you, even if that fix is just keeping on top of it. Doctors may sound like they don't like people that are upfront and that question them, but at the same time, they do tend to respect you more most of the time. You don't have to prove how strong you are to the doctor. It's okay to talk about your symptoms in a realistic way. They're there to help. Ultimately, that is their job. Your job is to be open and honest about your symptoms, how bad they get, and how they affect your functionality. Next week, I want to discuss a topic that may be a little lighter. The fact is we know fibromyalgia is serious. However, I've learned over the years that humor is really one of the best coping mechanisms about dealing with this illness. But I also want to discuss it in a way that keeps you from using joking as a way to minimize, because you can do both. I won't lie, I tell a lot of jokes. I have to. So if that helps you, feel free to stick around. I know how isolating fibromyalgia can feel, so I have started a Discord where my hope is that people can come, talk, share experiences, and just feel less alone. I'll leave a link to that below. And if you'd rather reach out privately, I am including my email as well. These videos are written from my own personal experiences. They are not meant as a medical diagnosis. They're not meant as medical advice. I'm just trying to share ways that I've learned to deal with the illness from over 3 decades of experience.